can't imagine the matches of Magic get easier to play as you get ever so closer to top eight and or qualification. As we can take a look at our decks, it is Izzet Affinity on one side of the table here, a deck we've seen already. This one, unfortunately, though, no Ravagers to speak of, but still fan favorite Claws of Gix becoming more and more standard of this deck, which personally is just a treat.
Yeah, it's just a nice little, nod. And it's, a surprisingly nice little card. It's one of those things where it's like you wouldn't expect something like this to be good, but you combine it with weapon manufacturing and the right sort of game states, comes up pretty big. And this deck also, playing one Emery. I kind of like this. We saw sort of some of the players from Sanctum play an Emery Tameo build affinity at the first round of American RCs. I thought that was a really innovative and really powerful strategy. Sort of taking a little bit of that, playing the first Emery, and that's a card that gives you a lot of grind and also is very explosive. You get an Emery Bauble start and you really start moving through your deck.
Yeah, kind of a bit of both. So nice to see that card in the deck. Curious. There's even one more in the sideboard, actually. So in the longer, grindier games, perhaps you want access to something like that. The opponent, though, is on something, I guess we could call it even spicier than this. It is a deck that's been around for a while. 4-color Domain Zoo. Not a deck we've seen all too often. Certainly didn't have that many players at the Pro Tour, but obviously having success here this late into the RC.
Yeah, so this was a deck heading into sort of the Pro Tour metagame I was personally very high on. And that was because it felt like a lot of people might still be pulling the trigger on things like Energy and Belcher. And this deck's really good if you're trying to play against those two types of decks. If you're a combo deck, hey, I've got these Consigns, I've got these Stubborn Denials, that's pretty annoying. And you're trying to play a normal creature game, well, Leyline of the Guild Pack, plus Scion of Draco. That is really hard to beat for a ton of decks. You would be shocked how much you can just mull the 4 and go, Leyline, land, Draco, and the games are at minimum close. So, when that's the sort of thing you can mulligan to and you have those kind of matchups, it makes sense that with Energy being our second most played deck here on this weekend, that this Zoo player is doing quite well. And Doorkeeper Thrall, really, really strong in our own deck with Flage. That's sort of, end of turn Thrall, our turn play a Flage pass. Sort of, okay, this is sticking around. But also, Amulet Titan, like we talked about before, considered one of the most powerful decks in Modern right now. This is a sideboard card in your main deck along with the Consigns. And against Jeskai Blink, this is also just a sideboard card in your main deck with Warping not working the same way as Escape. So when they cheat the Riddlers in, I do believe they still leave at the end of turn.
Very nice to see. Again, definitely a card that if you can play it in your main, pretty powerful. Even has Flash because, again, they've just made the Hate Bears real good these days. Even though this one doesn't have 2 power, as just about everything else. But shades of Phyrexian Dreadnought, Stifle, and or Dress Down with that Doorkeeper Thrall Phage package. That, of course, is occupying it. Ragavan, of course, at the front and center of any aggro deck, really. Little Kavu in the 2 slot. Draco in the 0 slot, hopefully, if the Leyline comes down early. And just a bunch of, a mix of good spells that don't cost very much mana. Back in the days, there was a deck very similar to this, also called Domain Zoo, that looked very, very different, but kind of the the general want to play all of the colors and play the most efficient things in those colors aggressively has been around in Extended and of course Modern for a very long time.
Yep. And this deck, when the matchups are good for this deck, it is so, so good. So I'm excited to see this in our future match area. I believe both these players are X and 1, if I'm not mistaken. So, getting very, very close to that sort of, we're winning and then we're talking about can I draw situation.
Yeah, depending on, of course, where the standings fall, things get very complex as far as math goes. At least for me, I'm not a math guy. I just look at the cards and talk about them as they appear on screen. But curious to see how this matchup goes. Affinity obviously can get off to some pretty explosive starts, but so can this deck. And it feels like in the little creatures versus little creatures mirror, which is somewhat what we have here. The significantly bigger creatures might feel a bit better, but I mean, Kappa Cannoneer is no joke either. So I feel like both decks have little things and both decks have big things. So finding the right combination of those is going to be pretty important in this matchup.
Yeah, it's weird where Kappa Cannoneer becomes unblockable unless there's a Doorkeeper Thrall. And then your creatures are either bigger or smaller in very polarizing ways, right? It's either Midnights versus Kappas. But then if you have Leyline, it doesn't matter that much with the Draco because then you have Lifelink. But then if they have Shadow Spear, right? So like there's a lot of different like if this then that statements going on in this matchup. So it could be one that feels very polarizing just depending on your draw, right? So this is a spot where open deck list really benefits these kind of decks because for both sides, honestly, where it's like knowing sort of what are your key cards and being like, okay, yeah, this hand is, sort of all in on a kappa, that's good enough quite often. Sometimes it isn't, and having that information can be super big. It does look like actually Gavin is X and 2, excuse me there. Spencer is X 1 and 1.
Both have mulligan to 6. Shout out to production for putting a little text on my screen so I can not miss that. But I do see a Leyline in play, but I don't see a Draco. Territory Kavu is in the rubbish bin. Looks like got rebuked based on the graveyards I can see. And his Memlite versus Mishra's Bauble. Not the most intimidating board, but better than nothing. Spencer on our Domain Zoo player. Going to go ahead and play Arena of Glory as the land for turn. Again, all the lands do make all the colors right now because that's how Leyline works. And we do have the big bad. No, it's just Territory Kavu instead.
Yeah, I was curious to see, Spencer, which one we would play and if we would use the Arena of Glory to haste as well. Looks like Spencer, maybe looking at Gavin, saying, did you keep a hand that's all in on Vitalik Rebuke type stuff? If so, I'm going to try and get you there. And it looks like it's just a big old kappa.
Well, it's a big old kappa. Chat's going to be going wild, but here we go. Lands get cracked. Kappa is in play, and Spencer's going to be like, I have a large creature of my own. And then we'll do battle with the turtle and the dragon. And battle is old as time in Magic the Gathering. Turtle's gotten a lot more powerful since, I guess, Horned Turtle.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a little sneak peek of what's to come with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here very soon in Standard.
Oh, goodness. Can you imagine if they put Kappa in here instead?
Yeah. Why not? Let's live a little. We got weapons manufacturing.
We'll have to see. There's a land. It was funny, Spencer, obviously, right now his land's all tapped for Rainbow, thanks to Leyline. So considering options, getting a Surveil land, which again is the most common thing we've seen fetch for all weekend long, which makes a lot of sense. These are just great lands with land types you can fetch that do a little bit of extra sculpting for you, a little bit of extra info gathering, a little bit of surveilling, as Spencer decides he likes the card enough. He's going to put it straight to his hand. Moving into the there is the dragon. Arr.
So it was huge. Leyline Binding was the card left. That's going to stop Shadow Spear. Now, Gavin here, yeah, we don't want to rubbish away our Leyline Binding. Good idea there, Spencer. One of Gavin's best draws now. It will still, make it so the turtle is bigger than the Kavu, excuse me, and it'll make it unblockable, but it won't stick around probably long enough to actually do what you want to do, and that's stabilize the life totals. As Spencer here, 4/4 lifelink flying is going to kind of quote-unquote win the war, and if the Kappa starts attacking, then the Kavu can start getting into combat and gaining life as well.
Yeah, it looks pretty scary. Again, this is lifelink often the mirror breaker in these kinds of aggro mirrors, although Thoughtcast, not a bad way to go as far as replenishing your hand and trying to dig your way out of this. I see Sink into Stupor. That is a temporary answer to the Scion, but not really looking for temporary. I guess you could try and find 2 and go bounce the Leyline and then bounce the Draco, but that also seems kind of far away. So Gavin going to have to make some decisions here.
Yeah. Remember, our life totals are taking a second to catch up here, but it is 10 on Gavin's side to 28 on Spencer. And while we are getting a lot of damage here, potentially, and excuse me, a lot of cards here, and threatening a lot of potential damage, 28's a large number.
Figures continue. Close the Gix for 1, Mox Opal for 2. Kappa all the way up to 7 now. If I can double check. It's been a while since this card beat me in Legacy. Yep, it is a 4/4 base with 3+ and +1 counters. It is now unblockable as well, thanks to the trigger happening. And there's a second one. Hold on a minute. Now this is pod racing.
Okay, second one is good. That's 2 things that can be sort of unblockable and chunk in. But if you go and attack with your huge one right now, then the Kavu attacks back for 5, which forces the chump block. So you're sort of stuck having to leave it back on defense, which makes life hard, but not impossible.
First things first, the Vigilant Flyer with Lifelink Trample and First Strike is going to get in. Oh, and Hexproof. Yeah, sorry. Quickly trying to reel the abilities on Scion there for the folks at home. It does cost 12, but don't worry about that. Other things happened to make sure this Draco could come down very, very early with haste, thanks to the arena that is currently tapped due to its exertion from the previous turn. But the good thing still happening here for Spencer as the life totals continue to go in the direction Domain Zoo wants. Up for 1 and down for the other. Gavin down to 6. Going to have to answer the flyer or find another way to deal a lot of damage over the next 2 turns. Going to crack this land, draw a card, see if there's something else that might be better here. There's a Saga, probably not going to get all the way to chapter 3, so light reading here for Gavin, but could maybe make something happen with a construct token, making an artifact at least guarantees you get a Kappa trigger on the following turn, but you really want to go on this turn as well.
So I think Gavin needs to have Sink into Super to get rid of this ley line of the Guild Pact. I think that's Gavin's best route to victory, because then you don't have the lifelink from the Dracos. You're still in trouble. And yeah, I think he maybe does have the Sink in hand.
He does. Yeah, I saw it earlier, so he definitely does have access to that line. I was pondering about Leyline, then the Draco, but of course, if you bounce the Leyline, all the Draco's abilities get turned off, and it's simply a 4/4 flyer. That is significantly less scary, even though it is going to take you out in 2 turns, but that is a way that Gavin can maybe stabilize this game. Maybe baiting with an attack. 1 Kappa Cannon is going to come in. That one is blockable, by the way, but Spencer decides to block with his face, which has got 31 points of life attached to it right now, so makes a decent amount of sense. No use in putting your creature in harm's way. And Leyland Binding.
Yeah, I kind of... So I like Spencer Leyline Binding here. He's targeting the Mox Opal. I wish we had done this when we attacked with the Kappa. Okay, so we're going after the Claw Gix, not the Mox Opal. Okay. I was going to say, if you go after the Opal, then you can kind of force the Sink into Stupor, / keep him off Sink, off the top deck from the Bobble trigger, and then sort of know it's like, oh, okay, well, if you didn't do anything right at the beginning of combat, then I'll go to blocks and eat your Kappa for free. But still, yeah, I mean... Maybe Gavin didn't have Sink here. I have to imagine. We'd want to. I mean, with the double Arena Glory, you just can't cast the Guild Pact for at least a turn.
Yeah, definitely not the easiest spell to cast fairly. Obviously, it comes in for free in your starting hand. I could have swore I saw a Sink, and how are we going to play it in the end step, it looks like here.
Yeah, maybe Gavin a little worried about something, like some sort of threat coming down.
Yeah. Was a little low as far as board goes, so that could make sense. Unfortunately, the problem here is that even with the Leyline being bounced and potentially turning off all of the Draco's abilities, still going to be a 4/4 flyer. And Gavin's at 2, so Leyline Binding going to come in. Looks like Mox Opal now going to be the target. Yep, going to be put under that binding there. And Leyline's going to get bounced. Obviously, you have to cast the binding now before all your lands lose all their basic land types. But still a lethal creature on board, and Spencer's at 30. Did gain the life off the last attack as well.
Yeah, if we can somehow survive, then the Urza Saga will get the Shadow Spear. The Shadow Spear will go on the huge Kappa Cannoneer, and we will stabilize. But getting there that one more turn, that's the part that's looking a little tricky.
Emery, flipping some cards over, obviously can't activate. Funnily enough, Ornithopter might be the ticket if we have one floating around. And that's a very good find. Aethos Spellbomb.
Wow. Okay, that was maybe the best hit we could get. That answers the Kavu. As you know, that answers the Draco. The Kavu is a 2/2 right now, so nothing to worry about in that regard. And with Emery, you can just replay the Spellbomb over and over and over again.
Yeah, and of course, as a Saga, I joked, said it's never going to be able to find the third chapter, never going to be able to find an artifact from Gavin's deck, but looks like Gavin may have bought enough time here. Of course, the Hexproof turning off as well, with no blue permanent there for the Scion, so it is currently targetable by the Spellbomb. Emery also a 1/2, so it could get in the way of the Carvel if absolutely needs to, if Memnite for some reason isn't available, but the Kappa Cannons didn't even roll in. Gavin knows that this is not about a race anymore. This is just about me stabilizing with the Shadow Spear. So Scion's going to come in. Creatures now have to actually turn sideways. Carver's going to trigger, maybe try and take something out of the graveyard here for Emery, but all of a sudden, this position looks really good for Gavin.
We have to discard this ley line, and we have to draw Flage. I think that is our only way to win. Stubborn Denial, a little late.
Yeah. 1 turn too late here. Kappa Cannon is like, I'm getting in there. I'm not letting this Carver get anywhere near my life total. Going to bounce the old Scion as well. This is a multi 5 for Spence, by the way. We did have a quick production update after that. The Draco going to go back to hand now. No longer has Hexproof. Gavin at 2, which is a pretty precarious spot to be against a deck that's aggressive with access to all 5 colors. Draco's going to get replayed. But as you mentioned, there's a Shadow Spear lurking in the Affinities library, and they are going to now activate Urza Saga. Draw a card. Pick it
Okay,
up.
so best possible for Spencer here is Gavin draws Shadow Spear. Because if he draws it, he has to cast it, and then
Stubborn
Spencer can
denial.
Stubborn Denial. Yeah, and then maybe Gavin missequences the turn, and then that way Embry can't buy back the Shadow Spear.
Float some mana. Go searching. Don't know what the card in hand is, but I'm going to go looking through the library. There's only one card everyone has on their mind right now, both players and us here in the booth, thinking about that card right there. Shadow Spear in the library, on the table. Kappa Kennedy triggers, because of course it does. Right. Where's the equip going? Emery going to get activated nice and early. Only one card in Spencer's hand. We know what it is, but Gavin does not.
Okay, Stubbs is good. You get to keep your Scion around, but this is so backbreaking.
Yeah, you're now losing the race. Also, even if you replay the ley line, you can turn off some of the abilities that matter here. Yeah, this is all the life probably needs. Both Cannoneers are going to charge on in. Gavin knows he's going to gain a lot of life this turn. Gains 10 up to 12.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, no, it's 11. Sorry.
11, yeah, because the Shadow Spear, yeah. And that also has been Spencer's done the next turn. There's just no way for him to deal enough damage.
Yep.
Yeah, there's the bolt. A card short. Oh, no. Yeah, Spencer, yeah, he knows. He's like, I did what I kind of could. But, sometimes Capicania plus Shadow Spear just kind of takes over the games there. Singing the Stupa really showing why, players really like this card, especially in this affinity deck. It's a great way to stop something on the stack, but also these weird to answer cards you can kind of unsummon for a turn.
Yeah, that one at the spell will also coming off the top at a critical moment for Gavin. All the cards lining up there to be able to steal game one. I mean, the Mulligan to 5 was a Mulligan to 5, but still a pretty potent one. As we know, domains, you can have some very powerful openings. So mulliganing aggressively, not necessarily a bad thing when you're looking for such powerful openings. As we pop back over to our other feature match. And in fact, let's look at the sideboards instead. See what we're working with here for domains. Do anything you like in the sideboard here, Mason.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple cards that jump out to me. So, I mean, Wrath of the Skies, we've talked about in the past, sort of just cleans up all the small stuff. It's really hard, especially for this deck, to answer Kappa. Sometimes you see energy players, thanks to Guide of Souls, actually take down the biggest turtle in Magic currently. But Mystical Dispute is also a card that is weirdly very good against this affinity deck. I think players think of affinity as like, a colorless deck, right? And historically, it kind of has been that way, kind of splashing some colors. This deck's big payoffs are all blue. Kappa Cannoneer, Pinnacle Emissary, which we have weirdly not seen in the feature match area, and Emery. Those cards are all great. And then also the interaction on the other side, and the card draw is all blue. So really the things you want to counter, the big payoff cards, you almost never want to encounter the enablers. Blue, let's have this Musical Dispute in our deck. Those are the two cards that really jump out to me. And then obviously Wear Tear, sort of, a staple we're going to bring in versus these decks, and can pretty easily cut some cards like Winter Night Stories that I don't think are quite for this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I see Path of Exile too, but I mean, ward cost of Capicania is so high that I don't think we're ever going to do it that way. So it makes sense to me. So we can pop on over to the Affinity sideboard and have a peek, see what's there. As we mentioned, Ashok, another Emery, if we feel like it's going to be a grinding game, which I don't think it's really going to be. Anything else sticking out to you, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, so this spot looks a lot worse here. You could bring in Blood Moon. Sometimes you get the Zoo player. Your mileage may vary. One of the nice things about the Affinity deck is it can turn 2 a Blood Moon. Thanks to Mox Opal. Theoretically, you could turn 1 a Blood Moon, with enough Moxes and a will. But there's not a ton of cards I super love. I know some players like to bring in Consign versus Zoo. I think it's totally reasonable. You hit the Draco, and the Leyline Binding trigger is sometimes enough. Also, there's some other random triggers that come up along the way that, you can consign, and that can be pretty good. But I'm imagining we're going to take a lighter approach here. I could see Ember coming in not because it's the best card ever, but just because it's like, well, I have some cards I'm not super in love with. Like your Mim Knights are nice, and you kind of need them for your synergies to work, but they don't really do anything body-wise, right? Your Pithing Needle, kind of a deadish card in this matchup, doesn't have any really good targets. Engineered Explosives, sort of, sometimes is really good, sometimes it's unplayable. We're going to have to see how we want to go about playing this from Gavin's perspective, but I imagine we're going to take a lighter touch when it comes to these games.
That makes sense to me. I'm kind of curious how the matchup is going to play out, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. As I'll hold my thought as we pop into our backup match here. Grixis mid-range, Alvaro on the left versus Marcus Thibault on the right. Simic, Birthing Ritual, been kind of the deck of day two, I think we can say. At least deck of the later stage of the tournament. We saw 0 Simic Birthing Ritual in our first 5 rounds yesterday. Mason, we've seen it twice already in this early stages of day two. As the hand's getting written down here on the fancy notepad. Little Thoughtseize action is happening here.
Yeah, this is a tough Thoughtseize. So the birthing ritual is already in play. At least I'm assuming that to be the case because it's a little bit laid out from everything else, and we do have 2 mana tapped. It's possible something else happened there, but I think it's in play. So really, my question is, what is going on in the hand of our Grixis mid-range player? Because that's going to inform the Thoughtseize a lot. As you might expect, water is wet. My guess is that on average, we probably want to take this Shardless agent. It's just multiple bodies, and it's going to maybe even hit another ritual, and we really just want to keep them off Oculus. Okay, Endurance going away, maybe something like a Murktide it could be potentially in our hand. It could also just be that's the biggest body here. I wouldn't be surprised if Dismember had gone if we had a Psychic Frog where a Tameo is the follow-up. So sometimes with Thoughtseize, it actually gives information to the other player, and it's always really important, especially if your opponent tanks for a long time. Think about why would they be thinking about my hand? As here's another birthing ritual.
I think it's a reasonable thing to say in Magic. If your opponent's thinking, you should do some thinking too. And most Magic players, shockingly, don't think enough. So always think you should be thinking as birthing ritual number 2. Looks fun. Unfortunately, I guess you get 2 looks at a hit here on Shardless Agent, so that's not nothing. If you don't like the first 7, maybe you can look at the next.
Yeah, ideally that's where Fibblethip shines, right? You turn into a Fibblethip and then you turn into an Oculus. And it's like, okay, nice.
Nice.
Ooh, speaking of nice, this looks like a pretty good turn 1 here for Gavin.
I'd say so. Arena of Glory must have been surveilled because that is all the way in the graveyard over there. Crypt, Memnite, Mox Opal, Urza Saga, Thoughtcast. Not a bad turn 1 for Gavin Bennett.
Okay, so Spencer has double Wrath, which would have been insane here, but we have Thundering Falls as our first land. So you could imagine here, Wrath this guy's even just for 0, right? Just cleans everything up, and Gavin probably moves on to game number 2. Or game number 3, excuse me.
Yeah, that would be real nice, but unfortunately, Leyline giveth and Leyline taketh away. If your lands aren't painted, all basic land types can be trickier to find some of these double-colored costs, especially card like Wrath Disguise, which is so powerful, but relatively gated by its mana pips. Second land going to come down here. Saga going to go to 2. And does Gavin have a big payoff here? Is there a Cannoneer to follow up on this explosive turn 1? Again, lots of little objects in play, but no Pinnacle Emissary. These objects aren't converted into anything yet. In for 2. Come on. Let's start with the fun stuff. Not yet. I think I see a Kappa. Are you doing math?
Yeah, I think Gavin's thinking about if there's a mystical dispute, what happens? Can I play around stuff? And should I just activate my Saga for the next 2 turns?
Mm-hmm.
Because if, let's say Gavin does go Kappa Cannoneer here, I don't think he has anything to protect. I think if he did, he would just probably slam. Maybe he's double checking. I talked about this earlier. If you think you're going to win, make sure you think about everything. But yeah, so basically, this gives Spencer a turn to potentially Wrath of the Skies, but also you just lose a lot of Saga value. Where if you just go activate, and Spencer doesn't have Wrath of the Skies, you sort of, win the game very easily. I think Gavin, made the right play and sort of played around potentially Wrath of the Skies and tried to pinch Spencer of like, hey, I've got a big thing and wide stuff. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think I like that. I mean, obviously the dispute was there, as you highlighted, a shockingly good card against this deck with this many artifacts in it. But certainly picked off the Cannoneer on the stack, which is the place you really want to be. There's that Wrath. White, see you later board. Everything but that one land going to get taken out, I believe. Because Saga, yep, that's an enchantment, buddy. Put it in the graveyard.
Yeah. And this is also another moment here where we might see Gavin, sort of just fight until some, amount of pressure comes on their side, but is in a really sort of tough spot here. We are going to see Consign on the Opal, and I actually love that play.
That is sick. Pinnacle Emissary threatening to rebuild once again. Gavin kind of had it all, actually. Had the wide board, had the big threat, had the go wide again post Wrath. And now it's Kavu versus the world here. Just a single 1/1 robot heading into the red zone. The flies, at least.
Yep. And we drew a Kappa Cannoneer. which you would think, okay, I'm in a bad spot. This is what I want. My big, the game-winning card. Coverage keeps talking to me about it. It's actually not. You want to be drawing sort of some of your, miscellaneous cards, and then get that Pinnacle Emissary back and play a bunch of, stuff. Then draw the Kappa. So weirdly, a blank draw here in the short term for Gavin.
Yeah, I do like the description of Affinity being Pinnacle Emissary, Kappa Cannoneer, and then miscellaneous. As Gavin's going to scoop up the permanents, and we're going to be going to game number 3. Very quick win there for Spencer.
Yeah, and this is, Affinity, very strong deck. A deck I personally really enjoy a lot and think is really good. It's hard for some players to swallow because that just happens. And what are you supposed to do? You played kind of perfect. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I like that from Alvaro. Just kind of looking up like, whoa, is me. Why is this happening?
There's 2 eyeballs. Oculus. 1 off the ritual, 1 manifested. And as it's probably happened to you in Standard, probably happened to you in Modern at this point with how popular this deck has been. Just paying 3 mana to sneak that eyeball into play. Over the air it goes. We'll pass back and manifest some more dread.
Okay, so
Burning Ritual first.
Marcus is at 4. I can make it out on Alvaro's life pad. Alvaro at 10. So, we don't want to turn our Oculus into something different? That's weird.
Huh. Interesting.
I do appreciate the play pattern of Oculus of, I'm done, it's your turn. Okay, it's my action again. Let me do a little something.
Yeah, unfortunately, Birthing Ritual is not a May. You do have to look at 7 cards and then put them on the bottom of your library in a random order. So even if you don't want something else, because Oculus is the card you always want to grab, you do have to trigger your Birthing Rituals. And you don't get to stack your deck because it is random, as that's a subtlety just flipped on over. Because why not? I guess we're attacking, that's why.
Yeah, and this is actually surprisingly nice because the frog can jump and sort of threaten to attack you back. So now you can attack with these Oculists as well. The frog has to, I believe, chump the Oculus unless you have a kill spell, which you might also have a counter for as Marcus.
Yeah, only 3 cards in hand, so it can only make the frog so big, including jumping it, and that's not going to be enough. Marcus going to pick up what I assume is game at number... actually, I'm not sure. 1? 2? Anyone's guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that it's 2, just because of how much time is in the round. But it's possible both players had an extreme mulligan to 5 or 4. I know I've definitely played some future matches like that where they hopped in. I was like, we were both on 4. That's why that game, lasted so long. But that's life sometimes. And this Grixis mid-range deck, we saw it in round 1 from Lyndon Coots, our last RC champion. Didn't go so well for him in the future match area. Kind of ran into a bad matchup, but clearly going great here for Alvaro. And we had talked about it. These sort of decks, when you hit the right matchups, they are very good and they feel unbeatable.
Yeah, Psychic Frog is a hell of a magic card if you can get it going. Obviously, that's the plan for Grixis mid-range primarily. At least for our rounds, interesting to note that big decks of the tournament, the other big Psychic Frog deck of the last Pro Tour at least, haven't seen a lot of Vengeance going around. Haven't seen a lot of Esper period, actually. We've seen Esper Blink, as we've seen just about every flavor of Blink in the ice cream store so far this RC, but players are going to be shuffling up here for their, I'm going to say 3rd game. I'm going to put it out there into the world. I think they're going to be playing 1 more here.
I think that's fair. Maybe our main feature match is done sideboarding. I have to imagine we're close to it. Okay.
Yeah.
Winter Night Story still in the deck for Spencer. So Spencer thinks the game is going to go quite long, / maybe needs that card selection. If you've been playing any Standard, that card's been terrorizing you with Vivi for the last couple of months.
Yeah, certainly has. It's Pinnacle Emissary. Oh, yes. Put the ball into play.
And this is so good. Having 2 of those B baubles means that we're just going to have more gas. So you sort of did this big setup, and now you have 2 more looks at Kappa Cannoneer.
1 each. I'll look at yours. I'll look at mine. I'll draw 2 cards. In your upkeep. Very nice start there. 3 flyers. Pinnacle Emissary in the warp zone for later. No Kappa Cannoneer. So no Mox Opal. That would have been the true turn 1. Is it Affinity beauty? But instead, we'll have to settle for a very good turn 1 here on the play.
And no Leyline, too, means that these 1/1s might actually really go the distance. A Leyline into a Draco would just sort of undo all of sort of these miscellaneous drone draws. But that's going to be very far away.
Their 2nd land going to be deployed. Going to be tapped. I thought it was another Emissary for a second. Instead, it's a Thought Cast. Going to draw even more cards for Affinity. This has been one of the signature cards for Affinity since it was printed all the way back in Mirrodin Block. Feels pretty gross when an aggro deck gets to draw 2 cards for 1 mana, but that's the way it goes. And yet again, for Gavin Bennett, liked it so much, he does it again. 4 cards drawn already on this turn for the low price of 2 mana as the 3 flyers head on in and do 3 damage to Spencer. He's going to crack his land down to 16. Those little life points do matter because I think we're going to be in a race in just a moment unless Spencer can find a way to get the lifelink going on the Draco.
Well, Gavin drew the Kappa Cannoneer, so Spencer has to get a white source here and has to have Wrath of the Skies with another one in hand. Otherwise, I mean, it's possible he beats the Draco, but we saw he had issues beating the Draco when he was miles ahead. Excuse me, beating the Kappa Cannoneer when he was miles ahead. So I can't imagine this being an easy task if he doesn't get there. And this is one of the hard parts too about your domain deck. You know, ideally you want to get something like your Triumph here, but with this game state, maybe you want to get your green-white Surveyor land, make your mana a little awkward. Oh wow, we're just going for the straight-up plains here.
A lot of respect to a potential Blood Moon.
Yeah, that's a ton of Blood Moon respect.
And so, I mean, definitely indicating that Wrath is the card he wants to find. He does have one in his hand. Does he have another white source in play? There it is, Godless Shrine. Get out of here. Takes away most of that board. Tormod's Crypt going to pop, because why not? So Flooded Strand should be in exile. Wrath of the Sky is going to be in the bin. And Gavin's going to have his board reset somewhat.
Wrath of the Sky, yeah, is in the yard. Yeah. Weirdly matters because of Flage.
Yeah. Always fun to explain to your opponent the silly things that happen in Magic sometimes. At least we don't have to keep track of graveyard order. That was
yeah, thank God for that. This makes a lot of sense too. Why Spencer got the plains. The Godless Shrine was hiding on the back of his hand, so I thought he was on one land at the moment. So excuse me, one white land. So it makes sense, just sort of saving life, and like you mentioned, just play around Blood Moon because Gavin, because of those double bobble, actually has a full hand right now.
Yep, double bobble, double Thoughtcast, Warp, Pinnacle Emissary. We're going to go again. Do you have a second sweeper, Spencer, is the question going to be asked, but it's just Emissary in play alongside one robot. Remember, it's pretty good on one when you warp it in, but when you play it for 3 mana, the quote-unquote fair price, it just stays in play to keep doing the thing.
Yeah, and this is like one of the nice parts about Pinnacle Emissary is you play it early and then it actually dodges all the hate. Obviously it wouldn't have died to Wrath of the Skies there, but some other cards it might have. And now it's like you get to sort of have your card that gives you your big starts be your rebuild as well. And it has to eat, a lightning bolt here, or it got out of control.
Affinity can definitely do some grinding. I mean, again, they just draw so many cards. Never mind. The grind is stopped. It's Kappa Cannoneer time. Spencer immediately put to the test. There are so few ways for Spencer to answer this card, especially for any reasonable amount of mana. And he's like, please stop. I need to put this on the stack.
Well, yeah. So the Kappa's on the stack. Spencer gets to respond to the Kappa.
Yes.
Because he has Doorkeeper Thrall, which stops the Kappa Cannoneer from coming down. There's also a chance that Spencer gets to respond to the Urza Saga trigger. Gavin played just both those cards. I think understandably, just no ill intent here. This is just one of those things where, for example, a card like Force of Vigor, we could Force of Vigor in response to the Urza Saga trigger and blow up 2 things, which would stop this. I think maybe there's some communication where Spencer was shuffling and presenting his deck and maybe said something like, sure, in response to like handing the deck. He thought he was talking about the deck. Gavin thought he was talking about the saga or something in that vein. Also, Gavin knows about the Doorkeeper Thrall. So Gavin kind of, it should be pretty clear to everyone what's happening here, right? Yeah. Like, hey, I just want to turn off your +1/+1 counter. Yeah.
Please let me do that. All right. So deck's going to get shuffled. We're going to make sure we're figuring out what's happening. Doorkeeper Thrall is going to enter play. And
I guess the ruling is we've gone too far because that Kappa still has a counter on it. Maybe I misunderstand how Kappa is worded. It is worded bizarrely, to be fair.
A quick read, because artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger, is what Doorkeeper Thrall says. Whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, but a counter on this creature can't be blocked this turn, that would shut off the +1/+1 making ability of Kappa Cannoneer, which is also the thing that ties its unblockability. So there should not be a counter on the Kappa Cannoneer, assuming we understand when the Doorkeeper Thrall was cast. But instead, we'll play on. Perhaps it was played after his Territorial Carve is going to come into play.
All right, well, now the Thrall's in play, the Kappa won't be getting bigger and unblockable. So you got that going for you.
Do it simply a 5/5 with Ward 4. Very reasonable. considering follow-up options. Again, much worse when your giant creature does not continue to grow and become unblockable. So is, put to some stop here by the presence of this Doorkeeper Thrall. Had that Pinnacle Emissary turn, had it back, got it lightning bolted. So Spencer dealing with the threats despite Gavin again, grinding pretty well with his Affinity deck, just drawing boatloads and boatloads of cards with his early Thought Cast, with his baubles. Plenty of things to do, but do the things work with the other things? That's kind of the thing with Affinity. It's a melange of different objects, and they mostly point to wanting to pay off something else in your deck, and you need something else for that to be true. So Kappa Cannon is going to head on in, and we're going to double block.
Yeah, I like this double block. That card's really hard to beat. Sinking the Stupor is backbreaking here.
Yep, it's going to take out the Thrall. It's going to bounce the Kavu back to hand. That's going to make the Kappa Cannoneer start to grow again, but no artifact played here by Gavin. Make it a little bit bigger, maybe holding onto it for the follow-up turn.
Oh, no. We drew Flage. If we had the Thrall, it would just be in play.
Could have assembled our own little A plus B. Instead, it is Flage the fairway, if anyway, at this point here for Spencer. Going to need to start committing things to the board over. A quick Surveil here to start things off.
Yeah, and Gavin has Blood Moon in hand. So it's going to be really hard for us. Yeah. Good.
All right, Flage you.
Yeah, and I imagine Gavin here is going to just slam his Blood Moon as soon as he gets priority, barring drawing some card that's absurd.
Take your legal game actions and then slam Blood Moon.
Yeah. I mean, from Gavin's perspective, this looks to just be like a near game ender. He knows one of the cards in Spencer's hand is a Territorial Kavu. He gets the Mishra's Bauble and peek at top of Spencer's deck and get a little bit more information before he continues playing his turn. So could figure out if he wants to play or not. Doesn't care. Just gonna slam the Blood Moon. And yeah, you see Spencer.
That's game.
yeah, and that's one of those spots where theoretically he can win through a Blood Moon, but not with a card like Kappa Cannoneer beating down.
Yeah, it's going to be a 2-turn clock at that point. Was at least 7 power. Spencer was at 14 life. And going to be easy to finish off the game from there. No way to take out the Kappa Cannoneer. Basically impossible to target. Can't really cast any spells. So Affinity with a win on camera. 9-1-1, I believe. Affinity player moves up to. Good job there. So back to our backup feature match here in what we assume is game 3. A little under 20 minutes on the clock. Endurance in play alongside a mystery blue card. That may be Oracle? Ice Fang? Kaito's going to get shot down.
I think that's Cooling Oracle.
All right. That made the most sense to my brain. Is going to go ahead and take it out regardless. Kaito's going to stay protected. That is Kaito, right? Can't imagine there's any other Planeswalkers in this Grixis deck.
Yeah, I wonder. It looks like this Kaito has been on the board for a while now. I mean, we got an emblem. Its loyalty is in sort of a weird spot, implying to me combats happened towards it a couple times. It's an interesting card because in this matchup, it seems like it could be very good in certain spots and just totally blanked in lots of others.
All right now, we can say.
Yeah, right now it's great. Oh, yeah. Ninjutsu the Ninjutsu. This is actually very good. Because now your loyalty is higher. You can even tick up again to present, a ton of pressure on the board.
It's one of those sticky kind of threats that it's a little tough to kill, a little tough to target, depending on where you are on the turn. Endurance going to come down and try and tumble with it. But remember, it's 2 emblems in play, and there's a subtlety. Going to shut down that Endurance plan. Goodbye, Kaito, that we just ninjutsu'd. Off into exile you go.
Yeah, this is a really weird timing from Marcus. I wonder what's going on, because you can't block if we've ninjutsu'd. It means he's moved past that stage. I wonder if I guess his idea was just, I want to get the Endurance down before you draw a counterspell, because I think you're likely to zero the Kaito. But Kaito could also very easily stun once you make that decision, and then it's safe for the turn, and there's no pressure coming your way. tough decision spot here for Marcus.
Yes, such a fun card. Kaito,
Yeah.
definitely Bane of Nightmares. Some other players' nightmares, I think. There's going to be maybe some standard players that are going to be a little upset to see this Planeswalker lurking around their tables once more, but looking pretty good here in Modern as well here for Alvaro. Trying to pick up a 9th win here. Keep only 2 losses in that particular column as we pass back. As the Endurance put back on top, I have to imagine by that subtlety. See how Marcus wants to navigate this particular part of the game, kind of in the middle of this one with some soupy stuff happening.
Yeah. Interesting. So Alvaro knows Endurance is in hand because we topped off the subtlety.
Aeon Riddler. See all the information as well that Alvaro has in the hands, crossing things out as they get played. Clearly, Thoughtseize somewhere in the graveyard as Warp does move the Riddler into the Warp Zone. And Kaito's going to untap.
So Kaito currently is a 5/6.
Pretty good.
We can make it a 6/7 if we tick up. And the kids go crazy for it.
Kids do go crazy for it. We know there's 3 power on board and 3 power in hand. Ooh, stun instead, like this plan as well. Very similar.
Yeah, this is nice. This forces the Endurance. So if Marcus has some other card, won't be able to develop it.
Yeah, it looks like Kaito must be lethal, I think, based on the life total I can see on Alvaro's pad. I think Marcus is at 5.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then yeah, this is
mind.
lethal. And I think we're trying to fetch and surveil Indoor on Holy Heat being enough to kill the Endurance.
That would be very hype. That is not a tap land.
Yeah,
Unless,
okay, maybe. Or maybe we're just like
something
hard
else?
casting the subtlety. Yeah, it could just be like we're hard casting something.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I mean, I have to imagine Alvaro has a response here for this Endurance because I believe this Kaito is lethal. And if we can move Endurance out of the way, we will take our 9th win here. Always going to be feeling good in round 10. Land comes in, and there is a different removal spell. Looks like we may have enough already.
Yeah, I guess maybe we just had the Unholy Heat. Good.
There
yeah.
it is.
And I love the pop off there. Looks like that was a very tight game. Congratulations, Alvaro. Working through some pretty tight spots when we were able to come in there. Every time it seemed like we were sort of in a pickle, except for this last one. So well played. And you're going to have a lot of spots like that as Grixis mid range, and you're going to have to love playing them to register it for this tournament. And it's going well.
Yeah, definitely looking good there for Alvaro, but not a deck for the fan of heart, I will say. Again, we've talked about Modern being, in many ways, a format with everyone does something unfair. Grix is feeling pretty honest, apart from that little guy called Psychic Frog. And maybe you could arguably the card Thoughtseize, but I think at this point we've established that Thoughtseize is an honorable Magic card.
That's right. Yeah, it's for the pure of heart.